Hey everybody, my name is Deja and welcome back to my channel. Today I am doing a Kindle Unlimited book recommendations video. I absolutely love Kindle Unlimited and I've been using it for a very long time, so I thought that I would come at you with some of my absolute faves that I've read from Kindle Unlimited. Most of these are thriller, horror, and romance with a very heavy emphasis on romance because I feel like a lot of like the thriller and horror that I've read have been getting removed from KU because the KU catalog does kind of change every so often based off like kind of what's going on with the authors and if the authors choose to have their books on KU and the publishers. So this list is current as of September 6, 2023, so it may change if you're watching this in the future, but I'm hoping some of these books are still going to be on there for you. Also, I don't have any ambiance today because my school's having like internet problems and it won't connect to the internet, so I can't connect to YouTube to play the ambiance. So yeah, I'm sorry about that, but there's a lack of ambiance today. There's so many books that I'm going to be talking about today. I'll probably only mention them a little bit, and most of them also are not with me because I either read them on KU so I don't own them physically, or you know, they're at home because I'm at school, so I have mostly TBR books with me. But before we get into that, I am going to talk about the sponsor of today's video, and that is Ana Luisa. I've worked with Ana Luisa so many times and I absolutely adore their jewelry. Ana Luisa is a very sustainable jewelry brand. They are 100% carbon neutral and their jewelry is also such high quality for a very affordable price. Most of their pieces start at $39 and are really affordable, especially for the quality that they are. All of their pieces are strength and humidity tested. I've actually personally had these two pieces for a very long time, for at least a couple months, and Ana Luisa does have specific care instructions of how to make your jewelry last the longest, but I'm gonna be honest with y'all, I do not follow that. I'm a bad jewelry wearer because I'll just put these on. They're my everyday jewelry. I literally don't change them out unless I'm going to like a special event, or like I just, you know, kind of want to switch up my earrings or something that day to a different Ana Luisa jewelry piece. Normally I put them on and I'll forget about them. I take them into the shower, I do my hair with them on, which involves a lot of water as well, and they are literally still perfect. You really cannot tell that there's any wear on them at all. These pieces are tarnish resistant, so as I said, they are very good quality. I really do recommend their pieces because you get so much bang for your buck. It's affordable, amazing quality jewelry that lasts over time, and especially if you are getting a couple pieces and you switch out your pieces every couple days or a week, your pieces will definitely last you a very long time, and they're just so stunning and beautiful. I always get so many compliments on my jewelry and I'm always like, okay girls, like it's Ana Luisa, use my 20% off code, and you know, period, like the girls are getting a deal. So as I said, I do have a code. Make sure I click the link down below that I have in the description box, and also use the code DejaBooks20 to save 20% off your next purchase. And thank you again so much, Ana Luisa, for sponsoring today's video. I completely forgot to tell y'all what Kindle Unlimited is in case you don't know. Kindle Unlimited is an ebook service ran by Amazon, so unfortunately we're giving Jeff our money, but it costs $11.99 a month and you get to check out up to 20 titles from their library. And normally they have like a lot of like indie published romance and horror, but they also have a lot of traditionally published titles as well across genres, but I really love it for romances and horror, specifically the indie published ones, because sometimes they can be really hard to find and you don't normally have them at like your library or anything like that. So this is a really nice place to get those. It's really nice because it is kind of like a library. You get to check out up to 20 books, but if you for some reason don't like it, then you could just return it and get a different one. You get to check out up to 20 at a time, which is amazing. And these books normally go to like the Kindle app on your phone, or if you have an actual Kindle, it'll also go to that device. And there's just such variety and I love the service so much. I would definitely recommend waiting till there is like a deal or something like that, because oftentimes around like Prime Day, Christmas, Mother's Day, they'll have like get 3 months for free. Like they normally have a 1-month trial, but they will often have like 3-month trials, or where you can pay for like a discounted price for like a year. So I would definitely recommend waiting till you have a deal or something like that. But it is such an amazing service, specifically if you read romance or horror, because ebooks can cost like $3-4 a pop. So if you're reading like 3 books a month on KU, it's basically paying for itself, and you get such a wide variety of books. I absolutely adore the service, and this is not sponsored by them. Obviously it's sponsored by Ana Luisa, but I really love KU a lot and I personally use it myself a lot. So if you are kind of trying to see like what they have, and if you want to try out the service, if they have the kind of books that you like, or if you have the service, you don't really know what to read on it, or even if you do and you just want some recommendations, this is the video for you. So we're gonna jump straight into the books because, as I said, there is a lot of them. So I'm gonna kind of just like go over them briefly and not talk too in depth about each one, which I always say, but I'm actually gonna do that this time because we have a lot. First off, I'm gonna start with thrillers, and this first one I actually do physically have with me, which is surprising because I want to reread it. It's so good, and that is Brother by Anya Alvord. In this one, we follow a teenage boy, and he obviously lives with his family, and they live in like rural Appalachia. His family kind of has some really horrific traditions, and something about this does not really sit right with him, but he's very loyal to his family, and one day he does actually meet a girl and starts to care about her, which also kind of impacts how he feels about his family and what they do. This book is super like sad and dark. It doesn't have a lot of gore or anything like that, but it's just very sad and heavy. I absolutely adore this book. It has beautiful writing, and the character work is unmatched. Even if the characters are kind of like villainous and like terrible people, they still have so much depth to them that they feel like actual real people and not just some sort of like archetype villain. This book is so good and I highly recommend. Next up, I had The Last Mrs. Parrish by Liv Constantine, and this is the classic bitch I'ma steal your life thriller. This is her. She was the one that started it. I'm not even kidding. It had to have been her. She is the OG. And in this one, we follow a woman, and she kind of becomes obsessed with this woman, Daphne Parrish, and basically wants to take her life. We obviously kind of find out over time why she is so obsessed with Daphne and the Parrishes in general, but we also see her mastermind plan of how she's going to take over and become the next Mrs. Parrish. Next up, I have Jar of Hearts by Jennifer Hillier, and this is by far my favorite Jennifer Hillier, so I'm super glad that it's on KU. This one specifically follows like 3 friends, and we do get different timelines in the story. We get 3, but 2 of them are really like heavily focused on. It's about 2 girls, and one of them's our main character, and when they're teenagers, they get wrapped up and involved with this man. And the best friend to our main character actually ended up disappearing 14 years prior to the book when they were teenagers, and they have now found out that she was murdered, and our main character gets locked up for her murder. And so we follow our main character when she's a teenager and how this man kind of impacted everything for these 2 girls. We follow her while she's in prison / like when she first like gets arrested, and then we also follow her after she's been released from prison, and we basically just see the very complex relationship between all 3 of these characters, and we see how toxic this love can be and obsession, and it's just so crazy. This had such a crazy twist in it for me, and I just absolutely loved this story. Next up, I have Rock, Paper, Scissors by Alice Feeney. This one is a very, very fun thriller. It's not as like hard-hitting or dark or sad as something like Brother or Jar of Hearts. It's a little bit more lighthearted, but still very fun and fast-paced. And so this one follows a married couple, and they actually won a trip to go away. So they go away for their anniversary to this very isolated, snowy kind of like cabin, and they've been having a very rocky time in their relationship, but they still like want to celebrate their anniversary. And when they get there, they start getting like notes and weird things that are happening around them, and so they start to think that, you know, maybe they're not the only one there, and maybe they didn't even end up there by chance. Maybe it was on purpose. And the husband in this also has face blindness, which is a very interesting aspect to the story. I know not everybody loves the twist of the story, but I really enjoyed it, and I had a really fun time reading it. And it was the face blindness was really interesting because I'd never seen that in a book before this book. Next up is one of my favorite books of the year, which surprises people because this is, again, another really fun thriller. It doesn't really have a ton of depth to it, but that is The Perfect Marriage by Geneva Rose. I absolutely adore her because if you want a book to keep you gasping every single page, and it's not just going to be like a lot of tension and then a whole bunch of twists at the end, the twists are going to keep coming and coming and coming throughout the entire story. Yeah, The Perfect Marriage is going to do it for you. So we follow a woman, you know, and she is actually a defense attorney. So she's just, you know, living her little girly life, you know, out here, but her husband actually ends up getting arrested, and he's accused of murdering his mistress that she did not know about. But she, you know, really loves her husband and actually does not believe that he was the one that murdered this mistress. So she actually becomes his defense attorney and tries to defend him, you know, because she believes that the only person that can really do it is her, because there's a lot of evidence, but she's very much convinced that it was not him. Obviously, he did still cheat on her, so there is kind of that dynamic as well. This book will keep you guessing, okay? Had me shooketh and shaken, quaking in my crocs. This book really ate. I'm sorry for the Perfect Marriage haters, but I'm a lover. Next up, I have Finley Donovan is Killing It, and this one's more of like a cozy mystery. I'm sure you've heard of it. It was really popular on BookTube the past couple years, but the series I've heard is not that great after the first book. I haven't continued personally, but the first one I really enjoyed. We follow a single mother, and you know, she's honestly kind of struggling to keep even just a roof over her head. She has 2 kids, and she does co-parent, but you know, she's a struggling writer. She writes, but you know, it's not bringing in the best income. So she's actually meeting with her agent one day in a Panera, and she's talking about the plot of one of her books, and a woman next to her overhears this conversation and takes our main character as a hitman. She's really convinced that our main character is a hit woman. So she basically like drops a piece of paper and is like, hey, like, I need help, call this number. And it ends up being her proposing, like, I'll pay you if you kill my husband. So Finley kind of gets wrapped up in this murder scheme, and you know, she obviously is not a hitman, but you know, she also kind of needs some money. So this one is just really fun, and you know, sometimes we want something that has like a little bit of like murder or something in it, but it's not like heavy at all. Cozy mysteries are generally gonna do that, and this one definitely does that, and it just has such like a fun, interesting premise of how it even begins that I really love. Next up, I have The Fourth Monkey by J.D. Barker. We follow a detective in this story, and he, you know, starts to dive into the past of the serial killer because they actually were recently killed, but they do not know the identity of the serial killer. And they also find like a personal diary that the serial killer left. Our main character is really diving into this diary and trying to really understand the serial killer and getting into the mind of them, but they're also kind of racing against time because there may or may not be a victim that they have to save. This one I really enjoy because I love like a detective with a serial killer. I love that combination so much, and I know a lot of people don't like detective perspective, so this may not be for everybody, but I just eat up a detective perspective so much. And the fact that we're really getting into the brain and mind of this serial killer because we have this diary and we are just learning so much, and I really enjoyed that aspect of the story. Next up, I have The Kind Worth Killing by Peter Swanson. This is kind of like an OG thriller, but it is so good. In this one, we follow a man and a woman who meet on a flight, and you know, they just start kikiing it up, talking, whatever, and then I think the woman makes a joke like, hey, like, you should help me kill my husband. And he's like, okay, but like actually? And she's like, okay, but actually? And so, you know, they end up going to try and kill the husband. But this woman is not necessarily who our main character thought she was, and so there's a lot of kind of secrets that are hidden, some twists and turns, and it's really good. This was another one. It didn't keep me guessing like the whole time. I wasn't like the whole time, but the end twist really is one of my favorites that I've read. It is so good. I have another pretty heavy one, and that is The Perfect Child by Lucinda Berry. This one actually follows another couple, as a lot of thrillers do, and they have been struggling with infertility. One is a doctor, and the other one, I think the wife is a nurse, or I know she's also like in the medical field, I'm pretty sure. And one day, when the husband is just like working, there is a child that comes in that they don't know her identity. She's basically like an orphan and gonna go into the foster care system, and he starts to develop a bond with her, and so they end up deciding to adopt her. But the wife and this child don't necessarily like get along the best after the adoption, and the dad still has a very strong bond to this little girl, but some weird things start to happen, and the wife is just not necessarily thinking that something's all right up there with that girl. And last for thrillers, I have Stillhouse Lake by Rachel Kane. This follows another woman. She's actually a mother to 2 children. And, you know, she was just a little wife, like a stay-at-home wife. She was just chilling. And then one day, a man accidentally drives into her home. And this also drives straight into the garage, where it is revealed that her husband is actually a serial killer and has, like, a whole bunch of, like, his... I don't know if the dead bodies were actually there, but, you know, they find out from what is discovered in that crash and in that garage that he's a serial killer. So a lot of people are actually convinced that she was involved, but she was not. So a lot of people are trying to like come after her, and her husband is in jail now, but you know, he still has people on the outside. So these people on the outside are coming for her. These other people who think that she was involved are coming for her. So she's just trying to start a new life. And so she's constantly moving with her children, like changing identities. But after a while, she's like, okay, we really need to settle down. Like, this is not good for my kids. And when she starts to settle down, a body's actually discovered in the lake right behind her house. So now we're going to move on to horror, and I have Cirque Berserk as my first one, which is another one of my favorite books of the entire year. This is one of my favorite thrillers by far. This is kind of like carnival horror. This is so amazing, and it's written by a Black author, which a lot of horror is not. So especially if it's not racial based, like there's a lot of like racial horror, like When the Reckoning Comes, which are phenomenal as well, but sometimes you just want a little thriller or horror that has like Black characters written by a Black author, but it's not about racial trauma. So that's why I really love this one. We follow a group of teenagers, and they had like their senior night or senior day or whatever, and so they're already out and about together, and they're like, that senior day kind of sucked. We should do something kind of epic to like, you know, end of our senior year. We're all gonna be leaving each other soon. So they end up going to this carnival that is supposedly haunted. It's shut down, but basically in the 80s, there was some teenagers that worked at this carnival that killed a whole bunch of people there, and they just disappeared. They were never found, so people say they still kind of haunt this carnival, but everybody obviously thinks that it's just kind of like, nah, like, but they go to this carnival and murder begins to ensue. So it is really interesting. We do get flashbacks to the 80s as well, and it had a lot of like 80s pop culture references, and it gave such 80s vibes, because my pet peeve is when a book takes place in the 80s and then it doesn't deliver on the 80s vibes. Like, what was the point? What was the point? This book does not do that. And this book does talk about race, but more like an everyday way. The horror in this is not racial trauma, which I really enjoyed. And there is also an Indigenous character in this book as well as a Black character. This book is literally just so good. I was rooting for so many characters, like the villains, the main characters, everybody. I just wanted everybody to live and be happy, and you know, we can all have what we want. Next up, I have Them by McKay Watson, and this is obviously written by McKay, who is another booktuber, and I absolutely adore this book. And his other book is on KU if you want to check out more of his work. I was not the biggest fan of it. I talk about it in one of my wrap-ups, but Them I highly, highly recommend. We follow a woman, and she is just, you know, chilling at home, watching her little stuff on the TV, you know, with her dog. She's, you know, out here live, laugh, loving, and then an emergency broadcast basically comes on the TV being like, these people are out to get you, basically. They're like, they are coming, and not to trust everybody. So this man also shows up on her doorstep that she knows, but it's not actually him. So we don't really know exactly what's going on, but there are like these creatures that are trying to kill people and are decimating everybody, and it's an extreme level of violence and gore in the story. It is extreme horror. I forgot to mention that, but this one is extreme, so there's an extreme amount of violence, gore. This book made me literally throw up, which is crazy because I've never had that kind of reaction from a book before. But yeah, they're like these clone things, and they pretend to be your family members, and then they murder you. So she's just trying to survive, and it's crazy. It really has so much depth and nuance to it. It's so freaking good. They do actually have one Eric LaRocca on Kindle Unlimited, and that is They Were Here Before Us. This is actually one of my faves from Eric LaRocca too. I have a guide to Eric LaRocca if you would like to check that out. This one is one of my favorites. This one is a short story collection, so it has a whole bunch of short stories, and they all have to kind of do with like nature and love and how nature is actually really brutal. I think the tagline on the physical book is like, the only thing more brutal than nature is love, or something like that. So all these have to do with nature and love tied together, but obviously it's Eric LaRocca, so it has a lot of nuance and depth to it, but also a lot of horror. I absolutely adore Eric LaRocca's writing. It is so stunning and beautiful, and I just could eat it up all day. It's literally like my favorite writing. So yeah, Eric LaRocca is like top 3 favorite authors, so of course I have to recommend this one. Then the next two that I have to mention are by the same author, and that is Judith Sonnet. I have read No One Rides for Free and For the Sake of by Judith Sonnet, and these are both, again, extreme horror. For the Sake of is kind of like Squid Game-esque is how I see other people describe it. We follow a mother and her child disappeared one day like a year ago, and she ends up getting some contact from somebody basically saying, we have your daughter, and if you want her back, you're gonna have to do these tasks. And she does these crazy horrific tasks. This book almost made me throw up. I gagged on a public bus, and then I read Them after, and it actually made me throw up. And then No One Rides for Free follows a mother who is going to drop her children off at college. They're college students and they go to the same college, so she's going to drop them off, and she goes into a gas station, and when she comes back out, and so she goes into the gas station, leaving her children in the car, and when she comes back out, a man is in the car with her children, holding them at gunpoint. So she doesn't really know what he wants, what his motives are, but she will do anything to protect her children, and that is a recurring theme in Judith Sonnet's books, at least the ones that I've read, is motherhood and doing whatever you can to protect your children, and the lengths that mothers will go for their children. I definitely love both of these. They're both so good. So if you can handle the triggers and the extreme gore and violence, I recommend these for sure. And the last horror that I have is 100% Match by Patrick C. Harrison III. This one is extreme horror, but it's a little bit more on the lighter end of extreme horror, I would say. I wanted to throw in some that weren't extreme, like Cirque Berserk is an extreme. They Were Here Before Us is a verging on it, and this one is kind of like light extreme horror. It's just more gross than it is like gory or like horrific. It's just kind of gross. We follow this man, I think his name's Bart. I don't quote me on that, but I think it's Bart. And he works as a line cook at a restaurant, and you know, he just kind of like lives his life, and he's very disgusting, like horrifically. Like, I can't even tell you all the things that he did, but like, here's the light version is he'll take like a booger and like put it into people's food, or like he'll find a roach in the restaurant and then blend it into someone's drink. But like, he does a lot of gross things like that, and he's really trying to find his 100% match. He's researching women and what women like, and he's trying to become the ideal man so he can find his 100% match. And maybe he does, maybe he doesn't. You'll have to read it to find out. This one's also really short. Next up, we're diving into romance territory, and I feel like with romances I remember less about the plot. But first up, I'm going to recommend just Kennedy Ryan. She has a lot of books on KU. I've specifically read Long Shot, the first book in the Hoop series, and I read Flow and Grip, which are the first two books in the Grip trilogy. But she has a lot of other books as well, and like she has the complete Hoop series on there, she has a complete Grip trilogy on there, but I haven't read all those books. But she has some of the most heart-wrenching romances you will ever read. If you want your heart to be torn out, read Kennedy Ryan. She just has such a beautiful way of telling her stories, and even though they will rip your heart out, even though they are sad, they're still romances. So at the end of the day, at the end of the book, at the end of the series, there's going to be a happily ever after. She takes you around the world and she'll put you through the ringer, but there's a happily ever after at the end. And her characters are just unmatched. They stay in my brain rent free. Okay, Long Shot is really rough to read. That one focuses a lot on domestic violence. It is like a basketball romance. It has it in it, but not a ton. In Long Shot, we do follow a woman in college in the beginning, and she starts dating this basketball player who's on her school's team, and they are like ranked really high, but he also has a rival. Like, these people are rivaling, okay, from different schools, but then also like the NBA wants them both. Her boyfriend ends up having a rival game against his rival, and when she's there, like the night before, she goes to a bar and is just like chilling without her boyfriend and meets this man, and she knows that it is her boyfriend's rival, but he doesn't know that she is the girlfriend of his rival, if that makes sense. They end up meeting, but she's like, no, I can't do this, I have a boyfriend, you're his rival, whatever. But then later on they meet again after she's been through some stuff, mainly domestic violence. This book can be very triggering, so please go into it cautiously. And the Grip trilogy is also kind of like a second chance romance between a producer and a rap artist, and it's just so good. I love that one as well, but it is a little bit lighter, I will say. So if you are wary about the triggers and the darkness of Kennedy Ryan, of the two that I've read, I would say the Grip series so far is lighter. I haven't read the last book yet, but I do recommend Flow, the prequel novella that's basically like the first book in the series. You have to read that before you read Grip because it adds so much context to their story. Next up, I also really want to recommend Alexandria House. I have not actually read any of her books that are recommended on KU, but I read a lot of her books previously, and I really enjoy them. They are just some of the best like short black romances that I've read. They're so good. I specifically read like the Them Boy series, and I really enjoyed that one. That one follows a group of brothers, but she has a couple other series that are on KU, and she has amazing writing, amazing characters, amazing relationships, and just dynamics. So I definitely recommend checking her out as well. I also have Praise by Sarah Kate on this list. This one is a really fun one if you're just looking for something smutty but not too smutty, that just is kind of like follows a woman, and she recently like broke up with her boyfriend, so they move out and everything like that. And for some reason, like the boyfriend's dad put down the deposit or something like that, like he like co-signed, so when they are trying to get that deposit back from their apartment that they left, it gets sent back to the dad. So she goes to the boyfriend, is like, hey, like, can you go get this from your dad? But he has a really rough relationship with his dad, so he's like, no, like, you can go get it. She ends up going to get it, and the dad is actually one of the co-owners for basically like a sex club, and he, you know, also has women sent to him sometimes to like please him in different ways. So when she gets there, he assumes that she is one of these women and tells her to get down on her knees, and she's like, I'm not really like into like these dominating like men telling me what to do, but I'm gonna do it. It is age gap, and normally age gap bothers me now. It didn't bother me as a teenager, but recently it has. But this is one of the only age gaps I've read recently that hasn't really bothered me. This one was just super fun, and I feel like it had a lot of discussions around like kinks and like sex and just all of that in general, which I feel like was very positively done, and I just really enjoyed this one a lot. I should actually recommend this. I'm in a human sexuality class right now. I feel like my professor would like this book, so I should recommend it to her. Next up, I have Miss Sophie Lark. I read There Are No Saints and The Heir by Sophie Lark. I've also read Brutal Prince, but I don't know if that one's on KU. I didn't see it, but I did see There Are No Saints and The Heir. I really enjoy these. There Are No Saints is a serial killer romance, and I'm not going to get into all the details because I feel like I normally do like a really long description for this book, but it's a serial killer romance that takes place in Seattle. We follow a scrappy little girl who is just like on the art scene, but she's a struggling artist, so she's like super poor and she's just scrappy, you know what I'm saying? And this really high up man who is in the art world as well, and he is a serial killer, okay? And he starts stalking her and he becomes obsessed with her. I've read both books in the duology and I just really enjoyed the duology, but the first book eats down, okay? It's so good. And then The Heir is kind of like a Hogwarts situation, but for mafia families, and it's like a college. So when people get to college age and they're in a mafia family, they get sent to this like academy that's isolated. They have like no phones, nothing. And they're basically taught how to take over their parents' businesses, and they have like different subcategories for like basically like what your parents do. We do follow a pair, a man and a woman, that have known each other since childhood, and it is their romance. So it is like a childhood friends to lovers romance, but in like this mafia college Hogwarts situation. It's so good. It is a little long, but it's really good. Then I have a quick little romance graphic novel. It is Chef's Kiss, and I read this one recently and I really enjoyed it. It's basically about this guy who recently graduated from college and really cannot find any job because they want somebody with experience, but he can't get experience until someone hires him. So he ends up just running across this restaurant that's looking to hire, and he ends up getting hired, but kind of like on a trial basis where he has to learn recipes and give him to a pig, and the pig is like the determinant of whether they're good or not and whether he can stay another week. He's actually being taught mainly by one of the chefs there, which he may or may not have a crush on. It's so good. It has really cute friendship dynamics in it as well. Another romance that I have that's really dark is the Mindfuck series by St. Abby. This one became really popular last year and maybe the year before. This is like a novella series. All the books are around 100 pages, give or take maybe 20 pages. And we follow a woman, and she is actually a serial killer. So, you know, she lives her life day to day, but she is killing people, but she's killing them with a purpose, okay? She has a whole reason of why she's killing these people that she's killing. They're definitely very targeted, and she has very much plotted and planned for years to make sure that she would get away with this, and that the people that really did a number on her get what they deserve. But she ends up having a little relationship with this man, and actually, he ends up being the FBI agent who is like basically on her case. So she eventually finds that out, but he really doesn't know. So she's kind of grappling with this where like she's getting too close to being caught, but she loves him, and it's a back and forth. I haven't actually finished the series, but I've read the first 3 and I really enjoyed the series. It's not the best written thing ever, but it's just a lot of fun, and I love little like serial killer FBI moment. Next up, I have Getting Schooled by Christina C. Jones. This one follows a grad student, and she is actually like a TA for another professor who actually is her mom. And she reads this paper and is like, she eats it up, she loves it. But there's also a student in her class that she does not like at all, and they end up being the same person. And so the person actually wrote the essay that she does not like is actually like a man who's in college. I forget what they're called, but like he's not like college age, traditional college age. He's a little bit older, but he's in college. And so this man actually is also an amputee, but it's kind of like a hate to love romance, and it's just so good. Christina C. Jones has amazing writing as well. So this one was just a lot of fun. Some other ones that are also a lot of fun for me are The Deal and the Chase by Elle Kennedy. The Deal is the first book in the Off-Campus series, and The Chase is the first book in the Briar U series. And the Briar U series is a companion series to the Briar U series, but I actually read The Chase first, and that one is my favorite of both of these. I love the chase because of the representation. It's just like a little girly girl, but she has so much depth to her, the main character, and she also has ADHD, which I really related to, and I just really enjoyed the romance. But they're just like really fun college hockey romances that do have kind of like a little bit of depth and nuance to them. But if you're just looking for something fun, I would definitely check these out. And most people know of Elle Kennedy, but if you didn't know, these are on KU. Next up, we have Haunting Adeline, and this one's actually not one of my favorites, but I know a lot of people love this series. This is like a stalker serial killer romance. A girl moves into the house that was left her by her grandmother, and she also is kind of like getting stalked by this man that's very creepy, and at the same time she's also reading these letters that her grandma left behind, and maybe her grandma had something similar going on. This one is a dark romance. It's pretty long, but some people really enjoy it. It was okay. It was not bad by any means, but it just wasn't my favorite. I do, however, really enjoy the prequel novella called Satan's Affair. That follows a completely different woman, and she works at this like fun house kind of thing. And she has a relationship with like 4 different men at the same time, and they all like kill people. They work all in this house together, but they're like her little lackeys, and they kill people and murder people. This one's a very smutty. A lot of like sex and gore together, so be cautious of that. But I really love this one, especially around Halloween. It's so good. It's super short, the prequel novella is, so even if you're not interested in Haunting Adeline, but if you want kind of something that's like darker for Halloween, that's smutty, read Satan's Affair. Then another kind of darker one is Drag Me Up by Armed Virtues. This one is a Hades and Persephone retelling that takes place in like a casino club. It is so good, and there is a lot of representation built in throughout the story. I actually don't want to say too much about it because I feel like it kind of like spoils it, but as I said, it's a Hades and Persephone retelling, so you can kind of get a vibe from the story from there, and it takes place in a casino, but there's not really like magic or anything like that. It's more of like the modern day one, like modern day retellings, but it's so good. It's dark. Next up, I have The Simple Wild by K.A. Tucker. This one was on my favorites of last year because it made me sob my eyes out, okay? It follows a girl, and her father is actually like dying, but she never had a relationship with him. He lives in a completely different state than her, and she didn't really grow up with him. But because he's dying, she decides to go up to Alaska where he lives and stay with him for a little bit, and ends up meeting this man in this small town, and they have a romance. But at the same time, she's kind of grappling and dealing with the fact that her father is dying, but she also never really had a relationship with her father. So it's kind of like a hard strike to balance. Like there's grief there, but also there's kind of some animosity as well. So this one I think just kind of tackles some topics really well, and I really enjoyed it. Next up, I have a little romance novella, and that is Go Deep by Rosie Adams. This one follows a writer, and she writes like really smutty books, okay? And she actually has like a guy best friend, and she's telling him how she's in this writer's block and that she really can't write like right now. Like nothing is going onto the page, no words. And he's like, okay, well, I'm gonna inspire you. And you can kind of get where it goes from there because she writes smutty books. So how do you think he's gonna inspire her? Yeah, it's so good. I enjoyed the writing so much, and Rosie Adams writes some really phenomenal, just like short little stories. I haven't read all of them, but I'm fairly sure there are some more on KU as well if you want to check out more of her work, because they're really like fun, short, smutty novellas, but they still have some depth and character to them, and they're also Black romances, the best romances. I also have Dear Ava by Ilsa Madden Mills. This one is another one that I just kind of don't want to get into too much. It is a high school romance, which I know some people don't love, but I was on a high school romance kick like my senior year of high school and my freshman year of college. I loved them and I ate them up. I've actually read this book twice because I loved it so much. We follow this girl named Ava, and her parents are kind of non-existent in her life. She takes care of her little brother, and she's obviously, because she's a teenager taking care of herself, she's very poor, but she ends up going to like this very rich school, and she starts getting left some letters from this anonymous person, and they're written Dear Ava, and it's just like really good. It has a lot of heart to it. It's not just like, oh, like another like high school romance. It has a lot of depth and heart to it, and it deals with like a lot of different issues. This one also like made me almost cry. It's so good, and I love it, and I will take no hate for the high school romances, okay? Another high school romance that has to do with letters is Punk 57 by Penelope Douglas. I love this one so much. I've also read this one twice as well. So we follow this girl that's in high school, and she actually used to have like this pen pal from when she was like in elementary school or middle school. Like across schools, they like made people have pen pals, but they were just supposed to send like one letter, and they ended up being pen pals for years, but they never searched up each other's identity or anything like that. So she kind of has this pen pal, but he ended up like just disappearing one day and stopped responding to her. So she doesn't really know what's going on with him, but she's very worried, but she doesn't know his identity to check on him. But at the same time, this new boy transfers to her school and is kind of causing her some trouble. It's like a slight bully romance, but it's not like really heavy bully-y for people who can't like handle that. I know a lot of people don't like it. This one is like very like, it's more like teasing than it is bullying. But there's also this person going around vandalizing the school with spray paint, and they're signing everything like Punk 57. So there's a lot of things going on. Like her friend is missing, who is this person vandalizing the school, and this new boy just transferred to her school and is like kind of like teasing and bullying her, but she's also kind of attracted to him. It's so good. I love it. Penelope Douglas 8 with this one. Next up is A Takeover by Teal Swan. This one's actually the second book in the series. I haven't read the first one. It follows a widow, and she is just like taking care of her kids, trying to focus on herself, but her husband also ran this business, and it's like not doing well. So this other man like wants to buy it from her, but she's like, no, I don't want to sell it. And she really does not like this man because he's trying to buy her husband's company. It's like one of the only things that she has left from her husband. But, you know, as things do, she starts to become a little attracted to him. And I honestly really like a single parent romance where we can like see the kids kind of interact with this new person in their life and like get used to them. And I find that really cute when like people care not just about somebody but also their children. I know some people don't really like in romances like this when there's a lot of the children. I wouldn't say there's a lot, but there's a decent amount, which I enjoyed, but maybe you won't. But it's really, really good, so you should check it out regardless because it's good. We're getting towards the end. So we have Deviant King by Rena Kent up next. And if you don't like bully romances, don't pick this one up, okay? This one is as bully romances get, okay? I don't even know if I read the series now if I would love it, but I ate up like the first like 2 books so quickly, and I just absolutely adored this series. I'm not even gonna get into it because it's crazy, but if you are looking for an actual like bully romance, because I would read like Dear Ava, Punk 57 and be like, this is not bully romances, like what's going on? This is bully romances. The only thing I will say is that it takes place in England, so like their schools are a little bit different. It's like a high school romance, I would say, but this is dark. The things that he does is horrific, but something about it, just like my little senior year high school heart ate up. Quickly mention 2 other things. Saga by Brian K. Vaughan is also on KU, at least the first one is. I love Saga. It's like my favorite graphic novel series by far, but it's actually like sci-fi fantasy with 2 like rival species / planets like against each other. Obviously they're fighting in a war, and there's like, you're not supposed to like interact with them at all, the other ones, and like if you are in one species and you end up on the other species planet, killed, okay? But it kind of goes across the entire like universe, galaxy. Like it goes, the series goes all over the place. It's a journey. But 2 people from these different species that are rivals end up having a child together, and she is telling her parents' story as well as her story. So it's narrated by her, but we see the story even before her conception of where her parents are first meet each other and everything like that. So it's really, really good. And then also Ninth House by Leigh Bardugo is also on KU, which I was really surprised about. But this one is like a dark academia story that kind of has to do with secret societies and some dark magic. It's really good. I'm sure you've heard of it, so I just wanted to mention it quickly because I had no idea it was on KU. So if you've been meaning to read it because you feel FOMO, check it out on KU for free. So that's all that I have for this video today. Make sure to check out Ana Luisa down below and use my code DejaBooks20 to get 20% off your order, to get some beautiful, amazing, really high quality, long lasting jewelry. And if you made it to the end, leave a little phone emoji down below because you know, Kindle Unlimited, you can read it on your phone, you can read it wherever you go. And that's all that I have for this video today. I will see y'all in my next one. Bye everybody. I'm writing rhymes in the kitchen, soaking the moments we live in, yeah. You got the nerve to be on me, faking your life for the